Africa has hundreds of millions of hectares of uncultivated arable land. To utilize this great potential and tackle perennial hunger in the continent, the largest ever Food and Agriculture Organization Regional Conference for Africa was held in Zimbabwe last October. Speaking during the event, Zimbabwean president called for strong partnerships to boost agriculture in Africa.
The elimination of hunger affecting more than 750 million people in Africa, and the response to the different structural challenges we face as a continent requires strong partnerships.
Hello, I'm Mubarak Kenya, and welcome to this week's edition of Africa Today, a program which gives you an incisive analysis on events taking place in Africa. Today, we are focusing on Africa's agriculture and asking why has the continent failed to utilize its great potential in this sector. Now, in the second segment of our program, we are delving into the ongoing problem of racism in South Africa. We shall examine the reasons behind the unending racial tensions in South Africa. Stay with us till the end of our show and send us your views and comments as you watch.
What ails Africa's agriculture? According to estimates, Africa has around 600 million hectares of uncultivated arable land, almost 60% of the global total. And on the land that is being used, outdated technologies and techniques mean productivity is low. What really ails Africa's agriculture? In trying to answer this question, the largest ever the Food and Agriculture Organization Regional Conference for Africa was held in October last year in Zimbabwe. Ministers who attended committed to raise ambitions and accelerate actions towards achieving food security. Some remarks during the opening of the conference mentioned irrigation is a key in Africa's quest for food security.
We must therefore redouble our efforts to increase the effectiveness of modern water harvesting technologies and irrigation, especially in view of the need to improve agricultural yields to cater for the ever-increasing population of our continent.
Akinwumi Adesina, the president of the African Development Bank Group, believes that for the full potential of agriculture to be realized in Africa, young people must change their approach and look at agriculture as a lucrative business.
And the millionaires of Africa, they are not going to come from oil and gas. They're going to come from agriculture as a business.
Several Western multinationals and organizations involved in Africa's agriculture have come under sharp criticism for exploiting farmers in the continent. One such example is the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, which entered Africa's agricultural sector through the Alliance for a Green Revolution in Africa. This foundation is blamed for having increased corporate agriculture's profits, while local farmers continue languishing in poverty and hunger is rising. Now, for an incisive analysis on what ails Africa's agriculture, we have contacted Firoz Manji, an author, activist, and a professor of African Studies at Carleton University in Canada. He's also a publisher at Daraja Press. Thanks a lot for your time, Professor. It's always great having you in our show. Now, most of the world's arable land is in Africa. Why have African countries failed to utilize this great potential to feed the world?
People such as Bill Gates, who have supported the the Green Revolution in Africa, which was sort of set up, in 2006, have been trying to persuade our governments and pouring huge amounts of money together with the Rockefeller Foundation to persuade farmers well, first of all, to invest in large-scale industrial farming, and secondly, to try and persuade farmers to stop producing food for what is needed, but rather to get into commodity production by the promotion of inputs such as fertilizers, seeds, which are controlled by people like Monsanto and Bayer.
Professor Firoz Manji there. Thanks for that and stay tuned for more.
Major agricultural projects in Africa are blamed for destroying the production of essential food crops in favor of cash crops and introduction of expensive chemical fertilizers and GMO seeds that are bankrupting small farmers. Many farmers are not happy at all with the invasion of their lands by multinationals, as this farmer in Malawi explains.
Anthu mafumu amene amakhala ku ofesi yakanyenda anawumiriza dziko lino kuno kwa grupa mgwini ndi akabwangalo kuti mufune msafune ife basi tilima mzimbe ndife tinadabwa kuti sikutiphera ufulu wathu kodi ife tikalima kuti popeza tili anthu ambiri mbiri ulimi wa mzimbi umangotenga munthu imodzi mahekita ngapo pamene muno mdera lathu tili anthu ambiri.
Back to you, Professor Manji. Now, can you elaborate on how the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation destroyed small-scale farmers who have fed the continent for centuries?
What has happened is been a huge investment into failed projects, and the purpose of all this money is essentially to imprison farmers into the agro-industrial complex. And that means that people are trying to produce foods or produce commodities rather, which are for export and which are supposed to have increased their income. But the reality, it hasn't increased their income. In fact, many poor people are poor and impoverished and are dependent now on the inputs which AGRA and the Bill and Gates Foundation have done that.
Now, Professor Manji, can you give us an example of where the policies of the Alliance for a Green Revolution in Africa, being funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, have impacted negatively on agriculture in Africa?
One looks at in Kenya, for example, where I'm from, small-scale farmers are not even allowed to decide for themselves which corn seeds they plant and what fertilizers they use and what pesticides they use on their fields. And it's the agrochemical companies like Monsanto, like Bayer, that make all these decisions for farmers. And AGRA's focus is on a few food crops such as corn or soya, causing traditional nutrient-rich foods to be neglected and even displaced. And the statistics for the 13 AGRA-focus countries show that production of cereals has fallen by about 21% since the initiative was launched. A yield decline of 7% was recorded for root and tuber crops.
Thanks for that, Professor Manji, for your insight.
Another problem faced by farmers in Africa is that of subsidies. Western countries are also still subsidizing their farmers at the expense of developing nations, undermining market access for some of the world's poorest producers. For instance, the World Trade Organization failed to improve the plight of poor cotton farmers in African countries by getting the U.S. to cut its subsidies to cotton.
Now, earlier in our show, we had Akinwumi Adesina, the president of the African Development Bank Group, saying that the youth in Africa should get involved in agriculture. Well, already many young people in the continent have realized the business potential in agriculture, as this young man in Rwanda explains. Let's take a listen.
My name is Giscard Tuishim. I started doing farming in 2012 by doing tomatoes, onions, tree tomatoes, French beans, butternut squash for the local market.
Africa's population stands at approximately 1.2 billion people, and over 60% are below the age of 25. Now, this makes Africa the world's youngest continent. There is potential for agriculture to create employment. Now, what needs to be done to attract young people to agriculture? Well, you young people in Africa, let us know what you think, and we'll discuss it right here at Africa Today.
Racial tensions in South Africa.
Despite the end of apartheid in 1994, South Africa continues to witness racial tensions. The lingering complexities of race issues clearly show that the Rainbow Nation has to do much more to escape its violent past. Last November, South African police fired tear gas at opposition activists protesting against racism at a Cape Town school after a so-called whites-only year-end party was organized off-site, reportedly by parents.
Protesters targeted the Brackenfell High School, accusing it of not inviting black and mixed-race students to a private party that some pupils and their parents arranged after the school's official matriculation ball was canceled because of COVID-19. Marshall Dlamini, Secretary General of Economic Freedom Front, led the street protests against the alleged incident of racism.
We are no longer negotiating with racists. We meet them on the street and we defeat them on the street. That's why we're here today, to defeat them on the street.
At another incident in October, emotions ran high as two black suspects appeared in a South African court over the murder of a white farmer, which has once again sparked racial tensions, 26 years after the end of apartheid. The white farmers outside the courthouse in the town of Senekal said they were getting tired of all the murders.
We're here to stand our ground for farm murders. That's it. We're not here for the EFF or any political party for that matter.
Economic Freedom Fighters leader Julius Malema told a rally of supporters that many more black South Africans were victims of violent crime. He also insisted that white farmers are not being targeted in South Africa.
There are no white farmers being killed in South Africa.
In both incidents, President Cyril Ramaphosa issued statements expressing concern. Commenting on the school incident, he said the development brought back hurtful memories of a past we should never seek to return to. While commenting on tensions at a court hearing, Ramaphosa urged South Africans to resist attempts to mobilize communities along racial lines.
For more analysis on the recent racial tensions in South Africa, we have contacted Tiseto Magama. He's a political activist and a former member of South African Parliament. Thanks a lot, Mr. Magama, for your time. Now, there has been a spike in racial tensions in South Africa. What is really happening?
At a fundamental level, South Africa's economy hasn't changed. South Africa's social fabric hasn't changed. Black and African and colored communities and Indian communities and white communities are as segregated as they used to be, except for, of course, the sprinkling of, people of black people in particular, who have gone to live in those areas. But otherwise, the economy is primarily still in the hands of white people. From time to time, you see these flare-ups of racist attacks or some verbal abuse using the old racial epithets against Africans in our country. All these things have been there, but it's just that really our country hasn't dealt with them in a fundamental, in a structural way that really resolves the issue in the final analysis.
During his virtual message to commemorate Reconciliation Day, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa expressed concern over the recent racial tensions in the country and admitted that old wounds remained.
We have seen racial tensions flare up in several parts of our country, polarizing communities and opening old wounds. What we have seen in Senekal, in the Free State, in El Dorado Park in Gauteng, and in Brackenfell in Cape Town, shows that the state of race relations in our country remains fragile. We may have come a long way from the days of institutionalized racism, but we are alive to the reality that for many, reconciliation is something they have yet to experience.
According to government statistics, control of the economy remains in favor of the 7.8% of the population who are white, to the exclusion of the 80.8% who are Black African. The annual data released by the broad-based Black Economic Empowerment in July last year reveals that Black ownership in reporting companies across the economy was just 29% in 2019, compared to 25% in 2018 and 32% in 2016.
Back to you, Mr. Magama. White South Africans still control the country's economy. Now, what needs to be done to address the issue of continued marginalization of Black South Africans?
Our country needs to get serious, though, from my own perspective, about dealing a final blow to the questions of economic, inequality. That, of course, leads to all types of social ills in our society. And so, the issue of economic transformation is a real issue. It is a matter that has to be dealt with and dealt with decisively. But we are also, I think, very clear-eyed about the fact that, power doesn't concede easily. And so those in whose hands economic power resides are certainly not conceding easily. And you can see that in the proliferation of right-wing organizations, especially in the forms of NGOs.
Mr. Magama, you talked there about economic transformation. You already have the Black economic empowerment policies spearheaded by the South African government. Have these policies achieved the desired results?
The problem is to the extent that they did work, they've only worked for too few. And so the challenge is really to make them broad-based, so that a larger number of people are absorbed into or get opportunities in the mainstream of economic activity. And that kind of economic empowerment essentially relegates the overwhelming majority who are Black and poor to the sidelines of mainstream economic activity.
Luvuyo Madasa, Executive Director at Reimagine SA, says that the Black Economic Empowerment Law has been put in place by the government because the private sector is not willing to voluntarily implement the program.
In the main, the policy exists because the economy as we know it refuses to share. It refuses to grow enough to incorporate people that need to be in the economy, be it the skills base, different demographics at different decision-making spaces within organizations. But in the main, the policy exists and has been put together by government because the captains of industry aren't being as inclusive as they should be in terms of who participates in the economy as we currently know it. Now, it fails to be as transformative and far-reaching as it possibly can be because of those very reasons. It is a short-term response by very many of the industry leaders for a longer-term development initiative and prerogative by the government.
European Union businesses and investors have raised concerns over South Africa's Black economic empowerment laws. A study funded by the European Union found that investors view broad-based Black economic empowerment as a key challenge in their South Africa operations. These European investors are clearly not interested in empowering Black South Africans. Is South Africa under pressure from European countries which do not appear eager to see a successful implementation of the Black Economic Empowerment Program?
Europe has always leaned towards, maintaining the status quo while paying lip service on the other hand, for Black economic empowerment, because they understand it's politically untenable for them not to, at least in the public discourse, appear to be supportive of Black economic empowerment. There are also then, of course, decisions. I spoke to you about unequal pay amongst Black and white. Whites earning, more than 3 times what Blacks are earning. It's a decision that, managers and owners of businesses can take immediately. They don't need a conference. They don't need. It doesn't need a 10-year plan. It's a decision they can take, within their corporations.
Mr. Magama, you say that the ultimate decisions on empowerment of South Africans rests with the leadership. Now, having that in mind, what immediate steps need to be taken to reduce racial tensions in South Africa?
One is, white businesses in our country could begin to really, act in an equitable and non-discriminatory manner. Now, that is a decision that business can take on any day, even today on the 31st of January. It's something that I'm sure will immediately reduce the tensions. Secondly, government must continue to do what they are doing, that is calling for calm, and trying to pursue black economic empowerment policies and, of course, broader economic policies to bring about, a prosperous economy over the long term. But thirdly, government also has to display a sense of urgency in terms of implementing the broad-based black economic empowerment program.
Mr. Magama there believes that implementation of the Black Economic Empowerment Program is one of the key factors in resolving the recurrent racial tensions in South Africa. Well, that wraps it up for this edition of Africa Today. We hope you enjoyed our show today, and do let us know what you would like to see covered here at Africa Today. On behalf of the entire Africa Today team, it's goodbye from me, and take care.